everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's video I'm going to be talking through 25 books I would like to read in 2025. I never thought I was gonna do one of these videos again. For a couple of years I did them, like I remember I did 20 in 2020, and I think both times that I did one of these videos I only read like 2 or 3 of the books, so I was like, I'm probably never gonna do this again. I print out all of my book covers so that I can stick them in my reading journal. And yesterday I was looking through the Buzzwordathon prompts and I was going through my covers that I've printed out in order to be able to find covers that match the cover prompts, etc. And I started to pull out books that I was like, oh, these are books that I really want to prioritize. And before I knew it, I actually had a solid sort of selection. And then I thought, okay, well, I've got about 15 books here, so it won't be hard to find 10 more that I want to prioritize. I have various reasons for wanting to get to these books, and they are in no particular order. They are literally just in the order of my little stack here and the books that I have here. So they are just gonna be as I find them on the stack, I will talk about them. But the first one I'm starting with is actually one that I have already done, so I'm kind of cheating, I guess. But hey, I would have picked it anyway, and that is The Spider and Her Demons by Sydney Koo. I picked this up last year at Oz Asia Fest, and it was the first book that I read in 2025. Ren and I buddy read it together on our Perth holiday. Please do go check out that vlog if you want to see what we got up to during that week. And we both really loved it. It was an instant 5-star for Ren, it was a 4-star for me. We both had a great time with it for different reasons, and yeah, it was just so good. I just wanted to get one win on this video, okay? Because we know what I'm like at not achieving things. I just wanted a win. The next book is another one that I actually have with me. I bought it with me to read on the plane when I came to Australia. I did not read it on the plane. I have not read it in Australia. I have no doubt I will not read it on the plane on the way home. But that is Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho. I thought I was done with YA contemporary romance until I got into K-pop, and then I saw this and I was like, the colours, the theme of it, the fact that it follows a K-pop idol. I'm taking another chance, okay? If it didn't have K-pop, there is no way that I was gonna read it, but it does, so I will. Next up we have How to Age Disgracefully by Claire Pooley. This one is on this list because I have now read 2 books by Claire Pooley. I've read The People on Platform 5, The Authenticity Project. Both I gave either 5 stars each, or one was 4.5 and one was 5. As I've said in the past, for an author to become like an auto-buy or an all-time favourite author for me, I have to have read 3 separate things by them in order, and have loved 3 separate things. And she's now 2 for 2, and this is her 3rd book, I believe. And yeah, I find with her, very similarly to Heidi Swain, who I also have really enjoyed, I love the way she writes community and how she writes a big ensemble cast of characters and weaves their stories in with each other. I've always loved that about both of the books that I've read from her. So I'm hoping that this one's going to be the 3rd one that is then going to cement her as like a favourite and auto-buy author in the future. Next up we have one that I have previously started, DNF'd, started again, DNF'd, and I will finish this goddamn book because I think I might continue it, I don't know, but that is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. I really want to read this because I want to give it a fair chance, even though me and TJ Klune have had our differences. And even though I don't think I would be in a rush to pick anything else of his up, this is Ren's all-time favourite series and all-time favourite author. I want to give at least this first book in the series a try, especially as I've seen other people who have similar feelings to me with regard to Klune who also have loved it. So I'm kind of like, this is going to be my last stand effort to like his writing. Next up we have A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy Eileen. I read The Dark Becomes Her last year, really enjoyed it, and I actually picked Magic Steeped in Poison up way before I got that, and I've had this one on my radar for a couple of years of wanting to read it, and I've owned it now for just over a year, so I'm like, it's time to get to it. And it's also like an Asian inspired fantasy, which we all know that is like my main flavour of fantasy, and my favourite kind of fantasy is like Asian and mythology inspired, so I really want to get to it. Plus it has one of my buzzwords in, it has poison. If something has poison in the title, I'm gonna want to read it. The next one is one that I was like, I have one, I can hold this up, and then I've just realised it's on the bottom of a very big stack of books, and I've gone, maybe not. And that is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. Last year, I absolutely discovered that I love gothic fantasy, especially when it's like set on an estate or in a house. Never thought that that would be a thing for me. So I've added this one on, as I've been told that this one is very much in that same vein and that I should have a great time with it. I also believe it might be slightly dark academia, please tell me if I'm wrong, which again is something I would like to try and actually read this year. So it all goes together really well for me. And then the other one that again I can show you is, like, look at this really cool. Like, Ren bought me this, it's adjustable so I can like adjust it to the size of the book, but it's a little bookcase to protect my books when I'm traveling. But we have Bonesmith by Nikki Powell Proto. This I was really intrigued by because of like the kind of death magic in it, and it's like all about sort of death and the bones and wraiths and things like that, and I feel like this is kind of going to be borderline grimdark, and I do want to also get into grimdark a bit this year. So I'm kind of going with that kind of darker, more sort of almost like, yes, it's fantasy, but it's got an almost dystopic kind of apocalypse feel to it. And so I want to give that one a try because of that. We then have God Killer by Hannah Kaner. This is one that I've been wanting to read for a little while. I've even got an arc of it and just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. But it's short, it's snappy. I've heard nothing but amazing things. A few people have said it's one of their all-time favourite books. I believe, if I'm right, James from James Too Good said it's one of his all-time favourites now. I know Brittany's loved it. I think Claire from Claire's Creative Corner has loved it. And there's just so many people that I've seen, especially last year, there was a group of people that were all reading it together and they were all loving it. And it's made me go, I need to get my butt in gear and actually read this book. Next up we have one that was a gift from Chelsea for Christmas for me, and thank you so much. I love it. Well, I love the cover and the premise. And that is Prince and Assassin, and it's as the name suggests, a prince and assassin end up, like, he's supposed to kill Prince Julian, not fall for him. This is kind of giving me Captive Prince vibes, enemy to lover vibes, forbidden romance vibes, all of those things that I really, really love. And I'm hoping that it's going to be like these characters have that really juicy tension. And I know Chelsea read it last year and really enjoyed it, and it instantly went on my hit list of books I'm excited for. And like I said, it was a gift for me for Christmas, so I can't not read it. One of my big goals this year is to read books that have been gifted to me. Thank you again, Chelsea. The next book is Kim Ji-young, born 1982, by Cho Nam-ju. This is a Korean translated fic, but rather than it being one of those kind of cozy, wholesome fictions that I've been loving this year, like cozy contemporaries that I loved in 2024, this one is a more sort of harsh portrayal and a harsh look at the treatment of women throughout Korean history, and even now in sort of more modern day societies, how a lot of treatment towards women still has not changed. I'm expecting it's going to be quite different to the other translated books that I've read, but as I am wanting to read more translated fiction, I couldn't not include at least this one. Next up we have The Fragile Threads of Power by V.E. Schwab. I don't really think I need to explain why I want to get to this and why I want to prioritize it. It is disgusting that it is even on this list and that I have not read it yet, so we're just going to swiftly move straight on to another one that is still disgustingly sticking around on my unread pile, and that is Tyrant's Throne by Sebastian de Castell. I almost played it the other day. Yesterday I was tidying and I so nearly put it on, but I chickened out. And it's exactly the same with Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Nyan. I just keep chickening out of these final books because, especially if any of the books before it in the series give me emotional damage, how do you think the last book's gonna do? They're gonna destroy me. And I'm not ready. I can't put myself through it. Don't make me do it. But I'm gonna do it. Mark my words, these three are gonna get done, because if they are not, they are getting on hold. Next up we have Dark Rise by C.S. Pacat. This is another one where this is the third book for the author, or the third thing. So I've read the Fence series, I've read Captive Prince trilogy that she wrote, and it's now one of my all-time favourites. And so this is my sort of like third strike and you're one of my all-time favourite authors. And I did start this one, I was really enjoying it, but I know at the time something got distracted me, and then by the time I remembered that I was reading it, I'd forgotten everything. All I can remember is that one of the characters is called Justice. That's all I can remember. So I need to go back, start it again, and properly invest my time into it, because if it's anything like anything else I've read from her, I know I'm in for a fantastic time. Next up, we move from a lot of fantasy into contemporary romance with Take a Hike by Mimi Grace. I was intrigued by this one because I saw a lot of people recommending it. I'm also interested because there's going to be thick thighs and plus size readathons, and it's a book that a lot of people are recommending as being a really good body positivity book, and I am wanting to read more of those this year and read more diversity, and this is one of them that I plan on doing it because it's got multiple types of rep and we love that. Going back to our fantasy, and I'm going to be reading Legend of the White Snake by Shirley. Last year I read Fake Dates of Mooncakes. She instantly fell in love with her writing and her stories, so obviously when I found out she was coming out with not only another LGBT book, but it was also a fantasy and a retelling of a Chinese myth I don't know anything about, I was sold. The book arrived only a couple of weeks before I left for Australia, so I didn't have time to read it, but oh boy, is it a priority when I get home, and I'm so excited to get into a new fantasy. To be fair, most of these are fantasies. Like, very few of these are not fantasy. Including The Girl with No Reflection by Kesha Chow. This was another book that I picked up during Oz Asia Fest in my first week here in Australia. I absolutely loved Kesha talking about this book, and it's got a dark mirror world, and I'm kind of intrigued by that concept. So it's got some fantasy elements and some story elements that I am not used to. It's also historical fantasy that I don't typically stray towards. So again, it's kind of venturing into new areas of fantasy for me, and so I'm very eager to explore those and try some new flavors of fantasy this year. And another one of those is maybe not a new flavor, but definitely renewing an old flavor favorite, which was vampires. And with that, I'm going to be reading Mina and the Undead by Amy McCall. And again, it's kind of like set in the 80s or 90s, which I prefer to not read. I tend to prefer to read either contemporary or real like really far back historical. And so it's kind of like, you know, from my childhood, it's got Buffy the Vampire Slayer vibes. I want to give it a go. I've heard nothing but good things, and I really do want to give this one a try. Next up, we have a friend recommendation, and that is Promise of Blood by Brian McClellan. After the success of reading the first Sex Wizards book last year, which is Initiation by Alethea Faust, I've learned to listen when Jonah recommends something that he says that I will love, and he has recommended Promise of Blood because it's kind of got that almost steampunk-esque type of magic, and it's got politics, and it's got a kingdom in turmoil. It's got all the kind of things that I enjoy, and so it's not so medieval fantasy either. They've got things like pistols and rifles and stuff. And he has assured me I will love it, and after last year I now trust him implicitly when it comes to recommendations, so I've got to get to it. One that is just a TBR vet is Seasons of the Storm by El Cosimano. I've had this for a while. I feel like I may have outgrown this because I've had it on my TBR since 2019, and I'm now worried that I've left it too long to get to it, so if I don't get to it in 2025, I'm just going to let it go. I'm not going to sing the song even though my brain desperately now wants me to. Another one that I am ashamed has been on, it's not been on my TBR for as long as some books, but it's been on too long for my preference, and that is Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. I got a snippet of this from Yalk in 2022. I read it, I loved it, I thought it was going to be fantastic, I knew it was going to be an instant favourite book. It's now won awards for being the best YA of last year and things like that. Have I read it yet? No, because now it's gone from being a highly anticipated read to a daunting and high anticipated read, which are always the things that I will read the least, even though I know I'm letting myself down because I'm going to love them. Although some have let me down, so yeah, that's probably why I'm a little cautious. Another one that's kind of like a new flavour for me for fantasy is Divine Rivals, because I don't read a lot of stuff involving the gods. I also don't read a lot about journalists, and this has both. It has gods at war and journalists from either side of the war, and I think they enter into a romance or something like that. And again, it just kind of intrigues me and it feels like it's going to be something a bit different to what I would typically pick up. And again, I've heard so much good things about this series, so I would like to get to that soon. Next up, we have a new to me author, and that is Star Mother by Charlie N. Holmberg. I have 2 books by this author already on my Kindle. I have The Paper Magician and Star Mother. And I'm not kidding you, this is an author who has self-published like 30 things in the last 2-3 years, because they are everywhere, and every single book of theirs that I have seen, either through actively looking for it or it's just popped up as a recommended, when I read the blurbs, they all sound like books I would want to read. So it is about time that I finally get to this author and determine, is this an author that is for me? And this is the one that I want to start with. The next book is In What Trouble by Dana Hawkins. This is the second book in this series, but they can be read as standalones. They aren't in like order. I just prefer, even with companion novels, I like to read them in publication order. But this is the second book in this series. The first one was Not in the Plan last year, and this follows one of the friends from the previous story and follows their journey and their romance, and it's kind of set in I think it's a barista competition that they enter, and then, you know, fall for one of their competitors who I think might be an ex. If I'm wrong, I'll put it up here. But I think that was kind of like the premise of it. But yeah, I want to read more sapphic books, and I did really enjoy Not in the Plan. And then finally, we have another new author to me, another contemporary book, and one that I really want to get to, not only because I thought the first line was incredible, as when I read the first line of every single book I owned last year, but it just sounds so good, and that is How to End a Love Story by by Yulin Kwang. This is a debut book by her. It sounds amazing. It looks great. The very first sentence starts with saying, like, as far as funerals go, she supposed her sister's wasn't the worst or something like that. And it just instantly caught my attention, made me want to read it. And I think it's going to suit my sense of humour and my kind of dry, sardonic kind of humour and kind of dark humour. So I'm hoping that it's going to really fit my vibes and what I love with those kind of books. So those are 25 books that I would like to get to this year. Am I going to get to them? It's me. If they've gone on a list, they're doomed to die and never be read, but they're on the list anyway, and so hopefully I will get to at least 1 or 2 of these. My aim would be to get half of them done. That would be nice, but we're just gonna see, because you never know how the year's gonna go. And like I said, I did cheat with a quick and easy early win, but I'm just giving myself a head start. It's all good. Let me know in the comments, do you have any books that you are eager to get to this year and that you've kind of said, this is the last chance, if you don't read them this year, they're gone? Let me know. I'm always interested to hear from you. In the meantime, I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. Don't forget to check out my Patreon and my Etsy that are both linked below, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!